please. Θα μας παρουσιάσει το δικό του σχέδιο. Είναι εμπειρογνώμων σε θέματα οικονομικής ανάπτυξης και χρηματοδότησης της ανάπτυξης. Θα συνδεθούμε αμέσως μετά με τον κύριο Τσακίρη. Tell me. Θα το βολέψουμε έτσι. Είναι η επικοινωνία μας. Πάμε και στην παρουσίαση του κύριου Κορίνσκι. Και αμέσως μετά θα πάμε στον κύριο Τσακίρη. Θα προσπαθήσουμε να μιλήσουμε μέσω τηλεφώνου και να το βλέπουμε μέσω Skype. Εντάξει. Δεν είναι του χορηγού μου το σήμα. Είναι του ΟΤΕ.
Well, first of all, it's an English language break for now. So, unfortunately, I don't speak Greek. I would like to welcome everybody and send warm greetings from Microfinance Center in Poland, which is one of the organizers, together with European Microfinance Network, of the European-wide events to stimulate the dialogue about microfinance and micro-enterprises throughout Europe. How do I get rid of this? Okay. I want to talk about something that is actually very important and something that actually we should take into account, especially in a country like Greece, where microfinance is new. Microfinance is new in Greece, and I mean by this new microfinance, because microlending in Greece is probably as old as ancient Greece. It has happened here all the time, but the question is, there is a new wave of microfinance, how we do microfinance, and what we can, and there is a lot of learnings that took place, a lot of experimenting and experience in the last 30 years, and it would be useful to take that into account. And what I want to focus is actually business development services, how to provide business services, how to help entrepreneurs beyond credit, and how it relates to microfinance. And it's not a trivial question. When I take a point of view from the client, each client wants to be successful, each entrepreneur wants to be successful. And the success has actually, when we look at a successful entrepreneurs, there are four components. It has to be a person or a team that has qualifications, has skills, experience. They have to have a good business idea and a good business model to put that idea into practice. There has to be a market for the product and services they want to sell. And finally, there has to be, the entrepreneur has to have resources. So those person, idea, market, and resources, those are the key four components for success of every business. And it's when you look at when the business person or entrepreneur comes to microfinance, he gets only credit. He or she gets only microcredit. And obviously, from this picture, this is not enough. So here comes the idea: what else should we be doing? Should we be providing additional services, additional help to help entrepreneurs develop new ideas, new businesses? Or grow businesses. So this is called, so the answer is business development services, which are services that help to develop and improve business operations of enterprises, and that includes training, consulting, advisory services, help with marketing or developing business plans, and all kinds of business linkages that help to connect businesses with markets. And these services come in two types. Some of them are very operational. For example, not every small business is doing their own accounting, or so they would buy some of the services on the market, for example, accounting services. And those services would not be of interest to a microfinance institution, because those are really market-based services. But the other type, strategic service, what we call strategic business services, which are of advisory or consulting or mentoring type, those services actually are often integrated or linked to microfinance institutions. And there are, to provide business services is actually not very easy. It's a fairly complicated process. Those services have to be really related to real business needs. They cannot be academic. They have to be accessible and affordable, accessible in every way for small businesses. We have to speak the language, we have to understand how to work, how to communicate with small businesses, and help them to connect to markets and really understand the entrepreneur on the level of the entrepreneur. So it takes a particular skill set to provide those services. Now, the question that most, or if not all, microfinance institutions in Europe these days ask themselves, should they be concerned about, let's say, the level of skills with which entrepreneurs come to them? Should they just be focusing on credit, providing credit, or should they actually do something more? Should they actually, whose actually responsibility is it? Is it the responsibility of a small business owner to acquire those skills, prepare themselves, come with a business plan, come with a very clearly defined idea, and the microfinance institution is only provided loans? Or should the microfinance be actually providing other services, maybe training, maybe advisory services? So those are important questions. And as you have seen, for example, Georgios showed an example of AFI in Athens. They trained over 200 people, of which only 50 received loans, which means 25% of people who have been trained, which is actually received business services, actually were funded, but 75% of those people were not. The question is this the most effective, cost-effective way to get clients, to screen clients? Maybe it is. At the same time, obviously, it may be a very useful service for those clients, but is there enough benefit for the organization? So there's lots of questions that circle around the relationship between microfinance and business services. And I would like to present maybe three options how we can think about it. First of all, the most clean and the most kind of logical is that they are really separate services. Advising businesses is different than giving credit. It requires different skills. The expectations are different, and each of those services, advisory service and credit, have value of its own. On its own. And typically, the best kind of solution, what people have found out, is actually that each organization should do focus on their core business and do what they do best. So microfinance should be actually lending, or banks should be lending. This is what they do best, and they have the skills. And thing to remember is that microfinance should not be advising clients, because there is what's called lender's liability. We should not, when we lend money, we cannot advise clients how to spend money, because that may actually change the relationship between client and the lender. At the same time, business service providers should not be advising clients on on borrowing decisions. So I think the most clean example is when those services are separate. However, there are linkages. There are options to connect, let's say, microcredit providers or banks with business services. For example, loan officers may operate as brokers between microfinance, between their clients and providers. So they can understand, they can read, they can understand the clients' needs and actually refer them and help them to find solutions to their problems, not necessarily provide directly. Microfinance can also be a channel of distribution so business providers can actually provide training or counseling or mentoring services to the clients, especially in areas where, like rural areas where there are not many other options, or small towns where there is not many options. So linkages is probably a very reasonable solution for connecting microfinance and business services. But in some cases, it makes sense to actually, for one organization to provide both services, and some people have done this. However, when this is done, it is usually done through separate organizations. So, for example, credits. I think little as I understood of what Christos was saying, but he mentioned credits in Netherlands. Credits is providing credit, but they created a special outfit, special outlet for providing business services, which is separate, and the client understands that getting advice or coaching from the coaching side of credits is different than getting advice from getting credit from credit organization as a lender. And it makes sense to connect those services in two ways. If we can pay for it, first of all, because it actually advisory services are quite expensive, so we have to be mindful of the fact that if we want to create sustainable institutions, we have to cover the costs, and those services really create costs. So if we can find a way in which BDS services create business for the microfinance organization, or banks for that matter, then it would, I think and doesn't create internal conflicts between lenders and borrowers, that it may be a good idea. But it does happen in most cases when the organizations are bigger, stronger, and probably to start, it makes sense to keep the service separately, to keep them or in a partnership. And when, let's say, microfinance organizations become strong enough, rich enough, profitable enough, and they can afford, both in terms of capacity, in terms of resources, to do those services together, it may be, they may try to do that. So I think if I was to look at the best practice, to answer the question, what's the relationship between business services and microfinance, I would say focus on core competencies to build scale. So the microfinance institutions should focus on what they should do best, means lending, and then explore linkages and partnerships between other organizations that provide business services, and integrate if and when it makes a good business sense for microfinance organizations. So that's how I would define the linkage, the relationship between business services and microfinance. This is something to think about when we can approaching and actually defining new institutions and new ways of doing microfinance in Greece. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Λοιπόν, όσοι ώρα προσπαθούμε να βρούμε τον κύριο Τσακίρη μέσω Skype, θα κάνουμε μια προσπάθεια ακόμα να καλησπερίσουμε